All right, guys, welcome to the Grinding Gear Podcast, episode number 1. Me and Corey, we're going to be reviewing Crumble Cookie today, what they have to offer. I know Crumble Cookie is kind of new in the Buffalo market. I've had it once before, didn't have the best opinion on it, so I'm a little bit tainted. Corey, have you had it yet?
I have not had it yet, but I've actually heard that they're a little on the doughy side, I guess you could say. They're really not. I've seen like in memes and stuff that they're not great, but I'm keeping an open mind. I love cookies, so I'm curious what they're like.
Yeah, I'm not going to say too much because I don't want to taint your opinion, but I'm hoping for redemption from Crumble Cookie. After we have the cookies, you guys will get to see them. We'll give them a review. We'll call it the Scrug Score, and then we're going to move on from there. But while we're driving there, Corey, you wanted to talk about, what was your topic you wanted to talk about again?
Well, it's about our worst breakdowns, not mental breakdowns. We all have those daily, but I was talking about our vehicle breakdowns. Something that a lot of people don't think about. Mechanics don't always drive nice cars, and sometimes they break down. Henry's vehicle that broke down was much nicer than mine. I actually wasn't a mechanic when mine broke down. But Henry, why don't you go first?
All right, so I think we've all been there, different experiences, different times. You can always prepare for a breakdown to a certain degree. That's kind of part of the conversation in and of itself. But the most recent breakdown that I had, I was with my wife, and we were traveling back from, I'm originally from Providence, Rhode Island, so we were visiting my parents. We were driving back, and
in 1/4 mile, turn left onto Transit Road.
In the middle of driving back home, we were on the Mass Turnpike, kind of in the middle of that weird dead zone where it turns from the Mass Turnpike into the New York State Thruway. All of a sudden, the temperature gauge just spiked on the car. The time my wife was driving, she's like, "Hey, babe, do you see this?"
Now.
We absolutely saw it. It's kind of a little bit of a concern. And I was like, "Hey, let's make it to the next rest stop." By the time we got to the rest stop, smoke billowing out of the hood. I'm like, this is definitely not good. We're in directly at the halfway point from Rhode Island to Buffalo. Can't turn around now at this point. We're kind of at the mercy of the situation. I called AAA. AAA came out on the New York State Thruway and in the Mass Pike. You actually have to have a specific person tow you off, and it's 4 times the rate. Didn't know if anyone knew that. It was about 4 times the rate, and long story short, it was very expensive. We towed it to a random shop, and the water pump went. And if anyone knows anything about cars, on the Hemis, you don't know the water pump goes until it's just gone. It just yeets itself from the car.
Yeah, we've actually had one customer of ours, very good customer. He has a Durango RT, and it was
4
in
miles on the current road.
it was in for its normal yearly checkup. He's getting his oil change, doesn't put a ton of miles on it, went through it top to bottom. Everything looked good on the car. Not even a single drop of coolant leak in front of it. He got 10 miles from the shop, water pump grenaded out of nowhere. No noises, no sounds. So it's not something that happens to all of them, but the Hemis are not known for good water pumps.
So we got pulled. Unfortunately, we were driving at night. As I hate to say it, I feel like whenever you break down, it's the most inopportune time for the breakdown. So the repair facility was closed. We had no option. There was no real good Napa certified or TechNet certified shop in the area where we were at. So we did end up towing it to a dealer. They were closed. I was planning on forking out the money to stay in a hotel overnight. My parents, shout out to them, had completely different plans. They spent 4 hours driving to us and then 4 hours driving us back home. And then the following morning, we ended up driving all the way back to Buffalo in my parents' car. And then about 2 weeks later, when I could get the car and it was done at the dealership, because it took them about that long to get the water pump repaired, we ended up swapping the cars all over again. That's most notably kind of one of my breakdowns that we had. Yeah, it wasn't a fun experience. It's definitely never fun. And in that situation, I don't really think there's anything we could have done.
Yeah, no, not really. That's not like that's not exactly a roadside repair.
No, I definitely, we've definitely had quite a few customers with overheating issues. They definitely come into our shop. And I think there's some things that you can do when you're in the overheating situation, or things you can do to prevent your car from overheating. Often find customers who come in with bad head gaskets, or customers who don't want to have their coolant exchanged, or there's that minute leak there and it's like, oh, we'll keep monitoring it. We'll keep monitoring it. Those things can sometimes turn very bad,
Yes.
very quickly. But then there's other things I think in the situation for me that I was able to do on a different side. I'm not a mechanic. I can't fix a car on the side of the road. So I have an emergency fund for scenarios like that. I have about $1,000 set aside that, God forbid, something should go bump in the middle of the night. We can just throw that $1,000 at the situation to kind of make the problems go away. Because I'm not as skilled as you when it comes to fixing cars. You have some crazy stories. I know you and one of our past employees, you guys will fly out, buy a car sight unseen in a different state and drive it back.
Yep.
To me, that's absolutely crazy. I don't know how you guys do that. Absolutely crazy. And I commend you guys for that bravery and that, I guess you would call it like confidence in your skills.
Yeah, it is a little bit unnerving at times, especially when you fly out to see a car. You hope it's not a complete pile when you get there. And then if it turns out to be in good driving condition, you just hope that whether it's one state away or across the country that you can make it back without any major problems. And for the most part, it usually goes pretty well.
So what type of prep work when you're looking at a car, it's another state away? Because one thing when I break down and I'm in my car, I know my car.
Right.
I know the past maintenance on it. What type of prep work are you looking at? You're looking at a car 3 states away. You're planning on driving it back. It's going to be an 8-hour road trip back. What's going through your mind?
So for the most part, like you just said, if it's like a couple states away, 8 to 12 hours, if it's worth me to drive, I'll just trailer it. Even if the thing doesn't run, big deal. But if I want to fly out, the best thing I can do for myself is just have the guy send me a video of getting the car on a cold start, firing it up, handing over the engine bay with his phone, just letting it sit there so I don't hear any rattles or knocks. Have him send me good pictures of the underneath, the tires, that hopefully the tires are in okay condition. A flat tire is the least of my concerns. But realistically, all you have to really hope is that the guy selling the car will get you a good video of it running and be honest with you with the actual condition of it. And if it's good, then realistically, you just keep your fingers crossed that nothing happens on the way back, because you can't really fly with a tool set. I keep a whole tool set in my truck, but I'm flying, so I can't really bring tools. And then I just kind of got to hope that it goes well.
So you get on a plane, you fly out there. Do you do any research, like Carfax the car, see, hey, has there been any major repairs done to this thing? Is there a certain car you won't fly out for example? Like, hey, if it's over 200,000 miles, maybe you won't fly out for that car? Where do you kind of stand on that?
So the mileage thing really kind of depends on the car itself. Whenever possible, I do try to get a Carfax. If it's an expensive car, if I'm spending more than like $4 or $5 grand on it, definitely get myself a Carfax on it. I'll spend the extra $60. But the mileage thing really isn't even that bad. I have a good friend I met him through racing cars, that he just flew out to Colorado, I think. He bought a Lexus LX 470, Land Cruiser built by Toyota with Lexus body on it. And that thing had 215, I think, on it. He flew out to Colorado, and then he drove to California to pick up his girlfriend from the airport. And then they road tripped it back home. And he had smooth sailing the whole time. Granted, the truck was very clean, had no rust, and it was notoriously one of those vehicles that everyone knows runs forever. And he got timing belt records of it, and that's the only thing he was concerned about. And he flawlessly drove it 6,000 miles on his road trip coming back home, because he took the long way.
Wow. Okay. So sometimes it happens. Murphy, always lurking around every single corner. The car does break down.
Yes.
What's going through your mind if a car, has it happened to you? I guess first, have you ever flown out, got the car, you're a quarter of the way back, and man, that shit hit the fan really quick?
So that hasn't happened to me yet in that kind of an aspect. The worst breakdown I ever had, I wasn't even a mechanic yet. I was still in college. I was 19, so it would have been about 2014. I was coming back from a weekend of camping with my dad, his best friend at the time, and my girlfriend at the time. And we were in the Adirondack still. It was just north of, I want to say, between Tupper Lake and Watertown, Harrisville.
So nothing is around you.
No, middle of nowhere. Adirondacks, Columbus Day, so it was kind of like a holiday kind of deal. It was a Monday morning.
Everyone's closed.
Yep.
Even if there was someone around you,
Exactly.
they're closed.
Yep. So it was 8 a.m., middle of nowhere, Adirondacks. And I'm just driving down the road in my little Ford Ranger, just chugging along, nothing's happening, and the truck just shuts off. I'm like, oh, cool, this is good. Coast to the side of the road, try to turn it over, and it's just cranking.
In 1/4 mile, make a slight left turn onto Southwestern Boulevard.
And nothing. Okay, great. And at this point, I am very green as far as working on cars. I've done my own brake jobs, oil changes, minor repairs, stuff like that. I've never had to deal with a broken down car. So I pop the hood, and nothing looks wrong. The serpentine belt's good, battery's good. I'm not puking fluids all over the place. I got a full tank of gas. So I start Googling it, like, hey, why did my 99 Ranger just shut off? And then I see timing belt, and I'm like, oh no. I don't know if the timing belt's ever been done on this truck. So I crank it over, and I notice that it's cranking over extremely fast. Had no compression. So I pulled the timing cover back. There it is. There's the belt. Pulled it out by hand. Thankfully, in my Googling, I see that it's not an interference engine. I recently posted a video on Facebook regarding interference engines that bend valves when the timing fails. That is a catastrophic failure. You're not fixing that in that day, same day, probably the next 4 or 5 days. Fortunately, it was just a timing belt failure. But I'm in the middle of the Adirondacks on a holiday.
Did you have
Nobody's
any
open.
tools with you?
No tools.
No tools.
I had stuff to change a tire. So
Okay.
my dad and I are looking at it. He's like, I don't know, buddy. He's like, you know about as much about cars as I do. And some random dude pulls over and he's like, hey, you got car trouble? I'm like, yeah, timing belt broke, man. He's like, oh, that's not good. He's like, well, my buddy's got a shop around the corner. He might be there. I know it's a holiday, but he might be there. So he flat towed me around the corner to his buddy's shop. Wasn't even there. So then
And by flat toed, you mean with a rope holding
Yes.
on to it?
Yep.
Yeah.
He just dragged me with a rope. And we get to his buddy's shop. No one's there. So he's talking to me. He's like, well, do you know, like, how to fix that? I'm like, that's above my head at this point, man. I do brake jobs and oil changes.
Because at this time, you're only 19 years old.
Right. I was 19 years old. I wasn't even out of college yet. So I said, I mean, if I Googled it, I could probably figure out, but I don't have any tools. He's like, well, I was a heavy-duty truck mechanic for about 30 years. He's like, I got my whole tool set at home. He's like, honestly, man, he's like, if you want, we could tow it up to my place. It's just up the street.
So a random stranger
Never met him 5 minutes before.
Bring it to my house.
Yep. He's like, bring it up to my house. So we towed it up to his house, pushed the truck in the garage. He's like, well, so I had, while we're going there, I pulled it up on my phone, the R&R procedure, and it honestly didn't look too bad. My dad ran to a local AutoZone. Fortunately, they were open, and they did have the belt in stock. The guy's like, well, I'll leave you to it. So I had to, I kid you not, this random dude just left you
alone with all of his stuff.
He's like, I got I gotta go tend to my maple trees and the chickens and stuff, so I'll be around if you need a hand. So
wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, unbelievably nice guy. Nicest guy you could have ever asked to meet in that situation. So I just pulled it up on Google and YouTube and was using all this guy's nice Mac tools, nicer tools than I'd ever used because I was, like I said, I was just a kid. And I tore it down, put it back together, go to fire it up, one start. There's two types of marks on the cam, crank, and oil pump gears. I used the wrong marks. So I tore it back apart and I retimed it. And then it started. I was in that dude's garage for 9 hours.
Was your dad still with you at this point?
My dad was just chilling for emotional support.
Okay.
So I had to redo the timing job again. And I actually was off one tooth. It had a sputter on takeoff ever since I did that job. I ended up fixing it a couple months later the right way.
Okay.
So yeah, I had to do that
But
timing.
you did it well enough to get home.
I did. It was about, I broke down early in the morning because we got up at the crack of dawn, kayaked out, got our stuff loaded up. So yeah, it was probably 4 or 5 o'clock after wrenching all day on a truck I hadn't ever really done a lot of work on in some dude's garage in the middle of the Adirondacks. And I barely made it back home to Canandaigua where I lived for college before I was falling asleep. And my truck was a stick, so my girlfriend at the time couldn't even drive it for me. I'm driving back like trying to make it. But yeah, that was definitely my worst breakdown.
Wow.
For sure. And the guy wouldn't even let me pay him. I was like, listen, like, let us
do you still talk to him? Have you stayed in contact with him?
2 years ago when I was driving past his house, because he lives on Route 3, which is the main route to get from Watertown to the to Tupper Lake. it's the route we always take. I actually saw him out mowing his lawn the last time I drove past. So I pulled over. I was like, hey, I'm like, you might not remember me. He's like, you let me fix my truck in your garage. He's like, oh yeah, he broke that timing belt. That was like, what, 10 years ago? I'm like, yeah, it was a long time ago. Super, super awesome dude. He, all he could let me do was buy him a case of beer and buy a jug of maple syrup off him. That's all he let me do for him.
Wow. I mean, that just like, the camaraderie, the trust. I mean, it's what I would hope anyone would do if I was in that situation. And then I guess now that we're on the opposite side of that, we try to do that for other people.
Right.
Right? Everyone's down their luck every now and then, and you just need a helping hand. You just needed a break.
Mm-hmm.
So that is absolutely crazy. It's definitely not my worst. Maybe it is my worst, but I'm remembering another time that I broke down right around the same time, believe it or not. But this one was in a loaner car.
Oh.
And I think I told you this story. We get to travel a lot for work, and we go to different conventions and different expos for learning about the automotive industry. I've done a couple, you've done a couple now. And one of the really cool ones that we get to do was we flew out to Colorado, but I flew out in winter.
Okay.
And anyone knows anything about Colorado, there's a lot of snow, and that kind of is setting the stage a little bit for this. So I flew out of Buffalo to Detroit. My flight got delayed in Detroit, so I flew into Colorado really late at night. It's about 9 o'clock, and it was just starting to snow. Not crazy snow, but like there was about an inch or two on the ground. I got to Hertz Rental to pick up a loaner car so I could drive from Denver, Colorado to Colorado Springs, where the convention was actually held. Now, at this point, by the time my flight landed at 9 o'clock, I got to the actual Hertz rental car station. You got to get all the way through TSA again. You got to get your bags. It's another hour. So now it's like 10:30. I'm at the Hertz rental station. There's no cars available.
Of course.
I'm like, great, wonderful. There's no cars available because me being the cheapskate that I kind of was, I got the cheapest loaner car. So there's no economy cars. I'm like, it's 10:30 at night. They're like, hey, you can come back tomorrow morning. Or the manager was there, and they were really nice. They let me upgrade to the presidential line. And there was a bunch of Infiniti, sedans there. Sweet, awesome. I'm thinking, this is great. I got a car with leather now to drive all the way to Colorado Springs. I should be in about, it's 10:30. I should be in around 11:30 because it's about an hour drive. Not a big deal. As I'm pulling out of the parking lot, I'm noticing the cars all over the road. I'm like, this isn't good. I'll take it nice and slow. I'll be totally fine. Well, what I didn't know in Colorado is they have what's called cold outs or ice outs, where in between the major cities, no one responds for any 911 phone calls at all, period. So what ended up happening was I was driving on the road, and it just got to the point where I hit a section of ice. I was doing about 30 miles an hour on the highway. And if anyone knows about driving in Colorado, everyone does 85, 90 there. People were blowing by me in the middle of the snowstorm. I'm doing 30 miles an hour. It gets to a bend in the road, and what ends up happening, I just keep going straight. Road turns left, I go straight, doing 30 miles an hour, and I just slide right off the road. Not down an embankment or anything crazy. I didn't hit any trees. I just slid off the road. I get out of the car. I'm looking at the car. I'm off the road. I definitely can't push it back on by myself because there's just enough of an angle. I ripped the front bumper off. I ripped the rear bumper off in the process. And it's now 11:30 at night. I call 911. I call the Hertz rental car. I call everyone I possibly can, trying to get picked up in the middle of between Denver, Colorado, and between Colorado Springs. I learned about this ice out thing. No one's going to respond. If you're fine, just sleep in the car, is what they end up telling me. So meanwhile, I'm sitting in this car, and I'm fully planned to spend the night. I'm like, this is what it is. It just is what it is. Luckily, I mean, not luckily, but I must have had 10 truckers stop and offer help. Hey, do you need to give me a ride to the nearest town? Do you need anything? And I'm like, no, I'm totally fine. Meanwhile, I'm fully dressed in the suit in the middle of Colorado Springs in this car. I look like someone from a Hallmark movie. I couldn't get a tow truck from anyone. There was no sense driving to the nearest town because then I'd have to pay for a hotel or something. Until a state trooper came by. He stopped and he was like, hey, I know it's nice out. We're not supposed to call for anything, but I can tell you're from out of town. You're in a sports car, for crying out loud. I'm going to call a favor into my buddy who owned the tow truck company. He just pulled me out of the ditch. I bent 2 tire rods, but it was still, I was able to get it, limp it the rest of the 30 minutes that I had to, the rest of the way to Colorado Springs. And it turns out I wasn't even responsible for the damage or anything that happened, because in Colorado, you're required to have winter tires. Mm-hmm. This car was from Florida.
Oh, yeah, so I guess it had some crap tires.
And it had sport tires on it.
Yeah.
So I didn't even really know that. And now, I hate to say it, whenever I travel, I actually look at what tires they put on the vehicle, because it was 10:30 at night. I mean, I just got in the car.
Yeah.
I went on my way. I really didn't even stop to think about it. And that was probably my worst, because that could have really went south at any time.
Yeah.
I'm really happy that state trooper pulled by. But we are here at Crumble Cookie. We're going to go in, grab some cookies, and we'll be right back. Okay, so we are back. We got the Crumble Cookies. Really nice inside. I'm not
Yeah,
gonna
it's
lie.
a beautiful little bakery they got going on in there.
I feel like I'm in an Apple store, though.
Yeah, it felt like an Apple store
Like
for cookies.
the Apple store of cookies. You think it comes with a dongle?
Yeah.
All right, so I ended up getting a mint-based cookie. This is kind of what I got. Really, really calorie dense, it looks like.
Yeah, yours has the most on the menu.
Oh, it's
You didn't
wonderful.
do that on purpose, but
No, wonderful. I won't tell my wife. And what'd you get?
I got the kitchen sink. I believe it's chocolate chip cookie based, and then it's got potato chips and pretzels in it. I'm a big fan of the potato chip Reese's cup, so I bet this is going to be good.
Yeah, I am not with my peanut allergy, but I can tell you one thing. It's baked all the way through. And that was my biggest complaint the last time, was that it was like, they just, literally no pun intended, crumbled. Yours cold?
No, mine's pretty warm.
Mine's ice cold.
Yours is probably in the fridge overnight.
Oh, it's ice cream on top. It's not frosting. That's bomb.
Yeah, that's good.
Mine's really good.
Oh yeah, mine's really good. I like my cookies a little medium rare, I guess you could say. And this one's perfect. I love it.
Well, it's hard because it's frozen, but it's not. It's just chilled. And that's ice cream on top. Ice cream and a cookie. That's like.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with that.
But that's a great combo. Okay. You got to rate it. 1 out of 10. How do you rate your cookie?
Honestly, I give it a solid 8. That's good. That's a damn good cookie.
Okay.
I think my setting 10 is reserved for my mom and my girlfriend's cookies. So this is up there. It's good.
A 10? A perfect cookie?
Yeah.
Well, you're gonna have to make me some cookies, huh?
Dude,
Perfect 10 cookie?
Elise brings it. I bring in Elise's baking all the time.
I'm gonna go 8.2 for mine.
That's good.
I'm going on the decimals. 8.2. This is a solid cookie. I'll be happy to have this cookie anytime.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit on the sweet side. Like this, the ice cream is very, very sweet, but I really like it a lot.
Yeah.
Sweet. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us on the Crumble Cookie Expedition. Join us next time. We're going to have some other guests come with us, and we're going to try other great places in the Buffalo area.